Hello, I'm Jett Britnell, and Shearwater Research has asked me to tell you about how I got into diving and where some of those adventures may have taken me. It started for me when I was 5 years old. I was watching weekly episodes of a TV show called Sea Hunt. It was an underwater investigative show starring Lloyd Bridges as Mike Nelson. And that was so intriguing to me that I just knew I was going to do this someday. Around that time, we went to a county fair, and while other kids were begging for stuffed toys and balloons, I begged my father for what I saw on a table were 20 war surplus gas masks selling for $2 each. I needed one of them, and I wanted one of them. I didn't know why I needed it, I just needed it. So I begged him, please get me this, and he agreed. So I took it home, not really knowing what I was going to do with it. I just had to have it. Following weekend, I'm watching Sea Hunt, and that's when the lights went on, because what I saw was goggles, a hose, and a canister. So I figured the canister would contain air. So therefore, I could dive with this. And in our backyard, we had what I called a witch's cauldron. It was a big iron cauldron that my father put water and goldfish in it as a lawn feature. So I grabbed my gas mask, ran outside, cinched it up tight, heaved myself up onto the lip of this cauldron, and plunged my head in. And the lights went on for me. I could see the fish crystal clear. And beyond that, I looked to the bottom of the cauldron and I could see the rust flakes on the bottom. And I just thought this was the coolest thing to me. Coincidentally, the water started to flood into the mask. And I still remain supremely confident that no worries, I got the breathing hose and this canister, I've got this. Well, I swallowed some water and aborted the dive, and that was my first plunge. So going forward from there, living in Smith Falls, Ontario, I would be watching every documentary I could on Jacques Cousteau. I became aware of Ron and Valerie Taylor from Australia, started following their work, and became aware of Hans and Lottie Haas out of Germany, and was reading their books as a young boy. So these were my boyhood heroes, these people. And I just knew I wanted to do this someday. We moved from Smith Falls to Ottawa. I spent the summers snorkeling for fishing lures in river currents. So I learned how to dive in currents basically from that. And as we moved to Vancouver, I was 22 years old, I took my diving course. And I never looked back. This was my boyhood thing. I wanted to do this, and out here in British Columbia, the diving's fantastic. So I wanted to bring back what I was seeing underwater, so I got into underwater photography, learned how to adjust f-stops and shutter speeds underwater. And my pictures were getting good enough, I thought maybe, just maybe, I might be able to get them published. But to do that, you really needed to have a photo text package, so you needed either to find a writer or you had to write it yourself. And as I wasn't trained as a writer, I had to learn how to write and for publications, and I did. Luckily, he got on with Diver Magazine through the work I was doing. I was a contributing editor with them for over a decade. And that was really my ticket to travel. I was going off on assignments overseas. I was writing internationally for other scuba magazines. I was going off the beaten path. I was really doing whatever it was I wanted to do and write about, and they were publishing it everywhere. So I felt blessed with that and fortunate, but it was work. You wouldn't go on these trips thinking it's a vacation. You go, I got to bring back a good story. So as it turned out, I ended up, as a result of much of this work over 25 years, I became a fellow in the Explorers Club in New York City, a fellow in the Royal Canadian Geographical Society in Ottawa, and a fellow in the Royal Geographical Society in London. And all of that is attributed to all this work I did, exploring shipwrecks, remote reefs that have never been dived before, going to places off the beaten path, and just documenting what I saw. And that was enough to get me in the door of these prestigious explorer societies. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. If you've ever thought of diving, I'd highly encourage you to do it. You're going to meet some of the most magnificent people you're ever going to meet, and people from walks of life you might not normally come in contact with. And many of them will be your friends for life. It's just that kind of sport. So if I can take the plunge at 5 years old, I think you can take the plunge now. Thank you.